But we should be very clear. These have been needed for some time. And the fact is we need more global combat ships if we are to combat not only Russia, but also China. Well, a frigate normally is something that escorts bigger ships and also merchant ships and things like that, normally in the anti-submarine role. I should stress, Ruth, that this is known as the Global Combat Ship. It's actually being built in Canada and Australia as well, and it's a major export success for the UK. But I think we should be very clear, these are not new ships. They are the final 5 of a class of 8 that have already been projected. In fact, they already have names. So it's a bit sneaky to say they're new. They're much needed, and it's good that the order has been confirmed.
Yeah, now I remember when the first part of this order was announced to great fanfare, and BAE Systems on the Clyde won the contract. They said they were going to build a frigate factory, and actually quite a lot of what they said the yards were going to do has been scaled down a bit, even as they've been able to sell the design for these ships and the build for these ships abroad.
Yes, I mean, they've been actually scoping the cost of this project over a long period. Let me tell you, Ruth, I started work on this design conceptually in 1998. Just think about that. It's 24 years ago.
So are you telling me they're out of date?
No, they won't be. They're very flexible. They're very modern. And in fact, the important thing with ships is that, the hull and the propulsion and things like that generally can be ordered ahead of time. But the systems you put in them are very important. And these will be very powerful ships. And what's quite interesting is there's a nod to the Union, because the first 3 ships are going to be called Glasgow, Cardiff, and also Belfast. And you'll be pleased to know there's an Edinburgh coming down the line as well. But we should be very clear. These have been needed for some time. And the fact is we need more global combat ships if we are to combat not only Russia, but also China.
Well, I mean, it seems to the average watcher that Ukraine can combat Russia by itself. Why do we need to do it?
Yeah, I mean, we've got to look at different contexts here. Ukraine has a massive land border with Russia. Before the war, it had the second biggest army and air force in Europe. We, as you know, global Britain, the sea is the physical equivalent of the World Wide Web. If we wish to maintain the international rules-based system at a time when both Russia and China are portraying their doctrine as war in peace, in other words, they intend to contest the oceans with us, then we have to invest in the sea. We're an island after all, and the old cliche that 95% of all the world's trade goes by sea applies here. If we're not strong at sea in future, we'll find that these Eurasian authoritarian states, Russia, China, and Iran, will start to project their power into the seas around them and will be shut out of the world system.
Now, as a kind of former reservist soldier, I've got my my green hat on here and thinking, well, of course the Navy want to spend billions of pounds on big hunks of metal to go places. But actually, the most important part of them is that they carry troops that can put boots on the ground. Because there is a lot of inter-service, if not squabbling, then at least competition for resource. And, some might say that the last naval war was the Falklands, and that was a very long time ago.
Yeah, well, it's the 40th anniversary, Ruth, and I've only just returned from the Falklands. And I think what we have to remember about that is that the land forces actually played a part for only the last 15% of that war. The rest of it was sustained over 8,000 miles by the Royal Navy. You're not going anywhere in the Army if the Royal Navy can't shape the battle space for you, get you in there, support you, and things like that. The thing is, Ruth, people keep saying, let's have more soldiers, but nobody can tell me right now in this country, with the best tank trap in Europe in the English Channel, what we need those soldiers for. We're in a maritime century, and right now we do need a lot of power at sea if we're going to combat Russia, China, and Iran.
Did you see what I meant there, Stig, about inter-service kind of clashing competition?
I felt I was overhearing.
Thank you, Chris. Rear Admiral Chris Parry there, making my point for me brilliantly.
I thought I was overhearing around that. I do think the point you made to him, he was so clear.
Oh,
sorry, Chris wants to come back in. We should let him have the last word. Sorry, Chris, come on.
It's about strategy. It's not about inter-service rivalry. We've got a maritime chief of defence staff. We've got a policy that is maritime. And what is the Army for?
I'm glad.